Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision-crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision-crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
And welcome to Undertow, Realms podcast dedicated to tales of the weird and the wicked. I'm your host, director and producer, Fred Greenhalgh. We're on to the third part of Carrion Harvest, written by Morgan Sylvia and read by Jessica Taige. Sprout's life of luxury has come at a steep cost, and the ambitions of her stepfather, Harvey, may be reaching the point of no return. She has precious little time to be a rebellious teenager before the world will be irrevocably shifted in ways she could never imagine, as we'll learn today in part 3 of Carrion Harvest.
I walk down the banks, picking my way over the rocks and stones. The water has left a sour taste in my mouth. I shouldn't have drunk, I know, but regret is no longer something I register. I'm not sure which is worse, drought or poison. Then I round a bend in the river and see the webs hanging from the trees, the bodies wrapped up in them. Memories come back in a flood. Mama screaming, covered in blood. Anguish returns in a wave. I know for one last time what it is to be human, to love and to lose and to hurt. The loss tears through me as I look around at the yellow skies, the empty fields. I fall to my knees, screaming as the shadows of the deathbirds cast me again into darkness. I would give anything to undo what he has wrought. But my wishes are useless against the metamorphosis, the alteration of my flesh. I can feel that truth burning its way through my cells. My skin hardens into chitin, reflecting sallow light. My limbs and muscles do not work the way they should. My movements are awkward, jerky, gawky. My legs are longer, thinner than they should be. My steps shaky and uneasy. The skin around my neck is hardening into rings. The skin there felt like leather yesterday. Today, it feels like a lobster shell. I stand against the lowering sun, tilt my head back to the sky, eyes closed against the colors I'm not yet used to. I forget flavors and colors. I forget the feel of cloth against my skin, the wind in my hair, the sharp bite of ice-cold waves frothing over my toes as I stand on sharp rocks. My world is one of energy and vibration. Soon, my own name will escape me. I'm losing my humanity, but along with it, I have also lost the ability to react with any emotion at all. Some tiny piece of my soul clings to this metamorphic flesh, screaming. Some fragment of the girl a fisherman once tossed into the air, her laughter ringing over churning waves of diamond and sapphire and coal. But she is growing smaller and quieter, as though she were falling down a bottomless well, further and further from the sun. Harvey's words echo through my thoughts. I was doing something great. What greatness has he wrought? The golden era he promised us is instead a dark age. To the east, lumbering beasts slouch towards ruined cities. When the dust clears, I see their silhouettes, the monstrous beings whose steps made the dead earth tremble beneath my feet. It isn't hard to mark their progress. Where they walk, birds start and fly off in clouds across the horizon. Where they've passed, carrion birds circle in the sky above the dead they've left behind. Where they nest, massive webs cover the forest, and corpses wrapped in silk hang from the trees. The wind is filled with dust and the stench of death, and the banks of the cold yellow river are piled with corpses. In the distance, the lumbering beasts mow down 100-year pines like toothpicks. The song grows louder. They all sing the same thing. I don't know how they know the music, but it echoes from every direction, and something inside me awakens, dancing. Driven by instinct, I crawl into the discarded skin of a spider the size of a tank. There, in that sacred womb, I curl up in fetid darkness, my thoughts slow and then quiet. Soon, I'm aware of nothing but the song that echoes to me through the earth and poisoned wind. The moon dances across the sky. I watch the constellations shift as I writhe in the agony of being unmade. In that dark shell, I curl into myself, bracing against the waves of pain crashing through me. When the pain eases, I stand, as witches do, and screech my final curse into the wind. Those runes are the last thing to roll off my tongue before it turns sable and grows sharp. That year, Oswald came into our lives. I'd heard his name before. Harvey sometimes mentioned him in passing. He was the one man Harvey really needed on his side. I'd started paying attention to the men coming through our doors, the gray cold lords, I still called them, learning their ranks and positions. We were by then having generals and millionaires and politicians over to our dinner parties. The millionaires were the most frightening. They controlled the politicians, who in turn controlled the generals. Oswald had no title, but he was the most powerful of the bunch. I understood how badly Harvey needed him the first time he came to dinner. Harvey looked at the menu himself and made changes. This was definitely not the norm. He usually only bothered to ensure that the caterers weren't serving any of the 10,000 things he was allergic to, but this time he looked at every detail. He even specifically told Matthew to be on his best behavior, and then told me I'd be playing violin. I came home from Estelle's to find a box on my bed. I found a dress that looked like something a starlet would wear to an award ceremony. There were heels and jewelry to match. I found Mama in her spa suite, getting her feet manicured. "What is this?" Her eyes brightened. "Try it on," she said. "You always look beautiful in green." "But I hate green. You know that." She smiled. Her lips were slightly too full now, just enough to look unnatural. "Green means power, wealth, abundance. We need all those things, honey. It's good luck." "You're trying to impress someone." I tilted my head. "Let me guess. Oswald?" Mama glanced at the lady who was doing her toenails. "Go take a break. I'll call for you when I'm ready." The nail tech smiled, nodded, and left. I glared at Mama. "I'm right, aren't I?" Mama sipped her mimosa. "Oswald is a very powerful man with very powerful connections. He's on the board of several companies and organizations that Harvey needs approval from. He has access to funds and clearance levels that can take the lab to the next level. And he is very, very interested in Harvey's work. Getting him on our side is very important." I looked at her nails. They were blood red. "Where do you go when the moon is dark?" She froze, the glass halfway to her lips. Then she drew a breath. "Do you understand the laws of intention?" I shook my head. "You have to learn how the universe works. It's reactive, and if you know how to play it, you can make it sing for you. What the fuck does that mean? I think she tried to frown, but her forehead was too Botox frozen to move. Language, young lady? Really? I put my hands on my hips. Papa swore like a sailor. He was a sailor. She gestured around. Look around. I grew up in a tiny rundown trailer with rotting floors and a sagging ceiling. I thought our little house on the bay was a mansion. Now, we have a real mansion and more money than I can ever spend. We're safe here. Safe from what? Everything and everyone that could hurt us. She lifted the glass to her puffy lips. There's always a cost, she said. When you send things out into the world, it will send them back threefold. Never ask anything, never send anything, unless you're willing to absorb it yourself. I shook my head. I don't understand. Her eyes were cold and hard. Try the dress on. If it doesn't fit, have Anna order you something similar. I got a sick feeling as I realized what I was. Bait. That night, I dreamt of my father in the snowbank, snowflakes slowly covering his frozen eyes. Mama and Harvey were into themed parties by then. They'd done several, 1920s, cabaret, various color schemes, oceanic desert carnival, each more over the top than the last. Of all the parties my parents threw, that next gala was by far the most extravagant. This one was a sci-fi theme. Harvey set up a holographic photo display so our guests could pretend to walk through the rows of corn. Only they would be able to do it without lumps and welts rising on their skin, as they now did mine. There's a feeling you get when you walk into a fancy hotel or a restaurant, the types of places where the rich and powerful play and prey. A vibe, Estelle would call it. It's the feeling of power. Matthew was born into that world. He was comfortable with it in a way I would never be. That night, however, he looked as uneasy as I felt. Oswald arrived around 7, accompanied by a burly bodyguard. The stench of influence and authority clung to him like perfume. This was not a man who would throw footballs with his friends on the beach, as my true father had. This was a man who decimated boardrooms and had politicians wrapped around his finger, who destroyed careers on his lunch breaks. The first time I met him, he shook my hand so hard my knuckles cracked. "You look like my sister," he said. "Oh." I faked a smile. "What's her name?" "Melissa," he said. "She died in the quake of 25. I didn't know what to say. I stammered a bit. "I'm so sorry." He just nodded nonchalantly. "I understand you play violin." "I'm not that good." "She's wonderful," Mama said. "Why don't you play for us? I'll have the band take a break." This, of course, had all been orchestrated. Oswald's eyes raked over me the whole time I was playing. I felt naked, like Jenny playing the club in Forrest Gump. I understood in that moment what it felt like to be a deer caught in a headlight. He caught up to me at the hors d'oeuvres table after my impromptu performance. "What do you think of Harvey's work? You must be proud." "Mm-hmm." I didn't really try to look interested. "Wait till you hear about the next stage," he said. "Just let those fucking Reds try something." I felt like I was talking to a snake. "Harvey tells me you're interested in Harvard. Good school. I have connections there." I mumbled something about Stanford, deciding then and there that Harvard was off my list. Then I shrank away into the shadows, trying to make myself invisible. It didn't work. Oswald followed me without following me as I moved from room to room. If I was outside, he came outside. If I was indoors, he went there. And then he caught me by the dance floor. "Would you care to dance?" I tried to think fast. I'd love to, but I have to. Great. Oswald grabbed my arm and started pulling me onto the floor. I wrenched my arm away from him and looked into the garden area where Mama was standing with 2 of the other wives. She must have seen the alarm in my eyes, but she only lifted her glass to her lips, draining the blood-red liquid. I felt Oswald's eyes burning into me. One of the caterers saved me. She pretended to trip, spilling her tray and splashing my dress with wine. She immediately made a fuss of apologizing. "Oh, I'm so sorry, miss. Come with me, and I think we can get that stain right out." I followed her into the kitchen. "Thank you." "Men like that," she shook her head. "It's in the eyes. They're predators. Don't be alone with him. You know what? Don't even go back out there." I looked out at the party, noted all of the bodyguards and security, and realized that if someone wanted to snatch me, they not only had extremely skilled men at their disposal, but hundreds of suspects, all of whom were too powerful to easily investigate. I didn't want to go to my room, as I could be found there. Matthew had taken over the game room with a few other kids his age. The last thing I wanted to do was play video games with a bunch of tween boys. It was much too late to visit Estelle. So, I went to the river and sat down on a boulder beside the bank and listened to some music while watching the moonlight play on the water. I'm not sure how much time passed before I heard someone coughing. I jumped so much that I nearly slid into the water. I saw the outline of a man in the shadows. "Stay back!" I yelled, pulling my headphones off. Okay," a voice said. Not a gray, cold lord voice, a young voice. The most beautiful boy I'd ever seen stepped into the moonlight. He had jet black hair and piercing brown eyes. "I didn't mean to scare you." "Well, you did." I peered behind him, still suspicious. He saw me do this and turned around. Seeing nothing, he looked back at me, questioning. "Is there anyone with you?" I asked. "No. I mean, my brother Robert is up at the house." He cleared his throat. "We're working valet." I narrowed my eyes. "Then why aren't you with the cars?" He pointed across the street to the section of lawn that had been chosen for a parking lot. Row after row of shiny, expensive cars gleamed in the moonlight. "Security said all the guests are here already. I don't have anything to do until they start leaving. I just came down here to toke." "Toke?" It's only then I noticed the joint in his hand. I began to relax. "So, you're not a decoy? You're not with Harvey?" He stared at me. "Decoy? Who's Harvey?" I must have looked terrified. I didn't answer. I really didn't have to. He just put 2 and 2 together. "That's your phone in your hand." I nodded. "Take my picture if you want. You can even post it." "Why?" "So you feel safer. If I kill you, they know who to come after." He jerked his head back towards the house, laughing. "I'm not some psycho, just a dude taking a smoke break." I don't think he expected me to take the picture, but I did. It actually came out really good. By some weird fluke, I happened to catch a bat flying over him. We both found it hilarious. I think I was already in love with him by then. An hour later, we were laying on our backs in the grass, passing a joint back and forth and staring up at the stars. We talked about absolutely everything, from our weirdest phobias to our favorite childhood cartoons. The moon rose bright and full and yellow. Every now and then, he'd get a call on his walkie and he'd leave for a bit. Then he had a busy streak as the party wound down. Most of the cars had left by midnight. Finally, his boss told him he could leave. He looked at me, tilted his head. "Want to see something cool?" "Sure." He took me to a small, nondescript patch of field beneath an old grove of oaks, where I found a door into the earth. He pulled it open, and I found myself staring down a set of concrete stairs that wound into utter blackness. I drew back. What is this place? It's an old tornado shelter. Storm took the house back in the 80s. You can still see some of the foundation over there. He pointed towards a patch of brush. Some of us hang out here. He trotted down the steps. A moment later, a light flickered on, illuminating walls that were bright with graffiti. I heard his voice echoing up the stairs. I moved forward cautiously, expecting a creepy bunker or cellar. Instead, I found what was a perfect teenager's hangout. The cement walls were plastered with posters and poems and graffiti. Artificial grass and a brightly colored carpet softened the cement floor. Someone, or several someones, had brought down sofas and chairs, an old picnic table, a projection screen, and all sorts of books and games. There was a dartboard game, an old foosball table, and for some reason, a giant panda, the sort of thing someone would win at a carnival. Pretty cool, huh? Jamie flopped down on a futon. I was pretty impressed. Who did this? All of us, he said. It's been here for generations. Used to be a storm cellar. Still is, I guess. Bunch of us rode out a storm here just a few years ago. We just happened to be driving by when that fucker touched down not a mile ahead of us. I started reading the graffiti. Before long, a motif became clear. The Gates of Hell was written all over the place, in various colors and fonts. I turned to him, puzzled. The Gates of Hell? What does that mean? Jamie laughed. Oh, it's an old urban legend. Supposedly, the Gates of Hell are around here somewhere. Some old psychic lady wrote a whole book about it. There's probably a copy of it here somewhere. I read the graffiti, the quotes and sayings and senseless things. Many were obviously inside jokes. Matt vs. Table, 9/2/18, in memory of John Smurfmobile. Then I noticed an older one, a little heart encircling two names, Estelle and John. We lost most of the farm back in the 80s. I tried to picture her as a teen. It would have been around the 60s or 70s. She'd have been wearing bell-bottoms, perhaps, her dark hair long and straight. You okay? Jamie asked. You look sad. Yeah, I know who that house belonged to, I think. He lit some candles, lit another joint, and connected his phone to a Bluetooth speaker. We played board games and talked until the sun rose through the rows of perfect corn. That night is one of the few memories that remains intact as everything else slips away. Sometimes you meet someone and the barriers that you're supposed to have with new people just aren't there. You just vibe, as comfortable as if you'd known each other your whole lives. That was what Jamie was to me. Within minutes of meeting him, I felt I'd known him forever. He made me laugh so hard, my stomach hurt. I know we listened to a lot of songs that night, but I cannot recall them. My mind only recognizes the droning chant that echoes over the empty hills. I know I am losing myself. I feel bits and pieces of my mind, my soul slipping away. But I still remember his smile and the feeling of his lips against mine.
Hey Undertow listeners, Fred here, wishing you happy spring. It is time to shake off the cobwebs and go out and see the world. I'm currently contemplating a long weekend in New York City, or perhaps New Orleans, and whether it's the Big Apple or the Big Easy, I'm treating myself to the luxe upgrades I deserve with Quince's high-quality travel essentials at fair prices. For example, I am eyeing their linen button-up shirts and also their beach shorts. Light and breathable, sustainably sourced from Europe and almost 70% less than traditional retail price. They've also got amazing suitcases, travel duffels, and fun little travel details like leather luggage tags and passport holders. I'll be grabbing a minimalist leather money clip wallet myself to keep my travel credit cards and ID handy while out there exploring. And I love how Quince passes savings on to us by cutting out the middleman and works directly with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. That is a winning combination. For your next trip, treat yourself to the luxe upgrades you deserve from Quince. Go to quince.com/undertow for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/undertow to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/undertow.
This episode is brought to you by Buick. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Buick Certified Service Fresh Start Tire Event. Visit Buick.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Jamie was my first love. And my last, I suppose. It's weird to think of those days when I felt the fire of young vitality burning through me and realized that those were the only taste of real life I'll ever know. I ran wild for a brief year. Too wild, perhaps. I grew that year. Too fast, perhaps. I learned a lot that year. Too much, perhaps. He was my world in those days. We grew into each other on those summer nights, melting into each other beneath and between the cornrows. We spent hours in that storm cellar, listening to music, smoking pot, talking about our hopes and dreams. We reached for the stars, never realizing that we were just savages, huddled in shadow. Memories blur together now, a mix of black lights and candlelight. Jeff Hanneman, Jim Morrison, Chuck Schuldiner. We were still young and dumb enough to see the future as promising and hopeful. We met there often on weekends when it was warm enough. Sometimes it was just us. Sometimes his school friends or brother joined us. Having grown up in the region, Jamie knew everyone, and he took me to dances and keg parties and country fairs. It was nice to finally have friends in the area, to spend time with people that were real, not like Mama and Harvey's friends. That friend group was quite large, consisting of several smaller overlapping circles. But Jamie usually hung out with his best friends, Ken and Mark. That summer, I was a shooting star, burning fast and bright even as I fell into darkness. We swam in the river, drove around going to yard sales and thrift stores, went skinny dipping in the river, ran barefoot through the fields, the moon high and bright above us. We were young enough and dumb enough to think ourselves immortal, even as the threat of nuclear war suddenly loomed over us again. We laughed at those tales, the old stories about the gates of hell. It became a running joke between us, one of many. Where do you want to have dinner? The gates of hell! What's in there? The gates of hell! The night I turned 16, Jamie took my hand and led me down by the river where I found a white canvas tent filled with roses and candles and wildflowers. I remember melting into him, reaching out, my hands searching, grabbing dark soil. Our laughter faded beneath towering oaks. I remember he was quiet after, uneasy. "What's wrong?" I asked him. "It's too silent," he told me. No crickets, no owls, no frogs. It's a cicada year, but they're late to awaken. Even without them, these fields should be buzzing with life. I hadn't thought about it until he said that. But as soon as the words settled into my brain, a sinking feeling burned its way into my heart. He was right. The night choir was gone. The silence was deafening. "Come here," he said, drawing me closer. "We'll make our own noise." Then I went back to a house framed in perfect roses that bloomed like blood drops against the moonlight. I looked up at our lights as I slipped in. Not a single moth danced around the bulbs. When I open my eyes, I stare up at churning gray-brown, yellow clouds that block most of the sunlight. I stand transformed, silent in dead, dust-colored fields. My senses have altered, and my mind with it. Have these colors always been here? Have I always seen heat and cold, heard distant groanings under the earth? Time slips away again. I fade in and out of awareness. I often wake with blood on my face and hands, or find myself sitting on the ground, surrounded by entrails and viscera. A liver once, an ear. At night, the horizon glows. The cities are burning. The wind reeks of death. In the distance, wisps of foul brown smoke rise into the sky. Massive behemoths stumble through the acrid dust. I have not seen the sun in days, weeks, months. But I feel the pull of the moon as the tides lift and release the barren soil beneath me. The change sears me at a cellular level, remaking me. But it isn't the agony that I fear most. Something deep inside me is changing. The colors look different to me now. My flesh and my thoughts are pulled by some primal instinct that feels at once new and incredibly ancient. I rail against it, sob, scream, screech. The monsters lumber forth beyond the amber haze. They too are singing to me. I can only see their outlines, but their song fills my ears, my dreams. It bleeds into my quietest thoughts, even to the places they should not be able to follow. They sing rage to the moon, above the sounds of flesh ripping and bones cracking. One of them turns to me, raises its head, and screeches. The sounding draws the attention of the others. I think for a moment, they can't possibly see me. But they are turning, shifting, and then they are moving impossibly fast. Straight for me. They know who I am. She stops them, their empress, their queen. They slouch back, slink away. Time loses its grip on me again. I come back to myself as I am standing at the riverbank. It must have rained. The dust has settled, and the sky, though still an angry mud color, looks less murky. The water has gone up a bit, though it is oily and slick with rainbow threads of toxin. Dead fish float on the surface, cover the banks in stinking, rotting piles. Thirst drives me forward, overriding what remains of my common sense. I lower my face into the water and drink deep, sucking the foulness in. All around me, poisoned winds sing of oblivion. I feel the colony for the first time then, a shared awareness at the edges of my mind. The song rises through my consciousness. Frequencies the human ears cannot detect, silver notes that pierce my thoughts. They are calling. They are coming. The air hangs heavy and thick around me. I lose sense of time. The sun and moon trade places in the sky. By the time I stagger into the woods, I can feel the metamorphosis guiding me. I see the being in the forest, a dark figure shrouded in mist. The creatures all stop before it. All but me. I keep moving. My movements red with pain. He bows as I pass. I stop before him, fall to my knees. In December, Andy was diagnosed with cancer. Harvey pulled some strings and got him into a trial for some new treatment. I'm not sure what it was, but it seemed to work. He came back to work paler and thinner, but more determined than ever to make sure not a single weed was allowed to bloom on our property. He got a terrible headache one day, not long after he returned. I didn't have anything to offer, so I went into Mama and Harvey's suite looking for painkillers. I was in her bathroom fishing through her numerous prescription bottles when I felt a slight vibration in the floor and heard an engine throbbing. Startled, I turned around and found Harvey stepping out of an elevator I'd never known of. It was concealed behind a floor-to-ceiling mirror panel. I knew of the elevator at the other end of the house, but had no idea about this one. I almost never went into their room. He moved past me, taking his lab coat off and dropping it down the laundry chute as though there was nothing at all unusual about a secret elevator. "What are you doing in here?" "I was looking for pain relievers." "Let me see what I have." He walked past me into his bathroom. I heard the water start as he washed his hands. A moment later, he re-emerged with a bottle of OTC meds. "You look pale. Do you need to make a doctor's appointment?" "It's for Andy. He has a headache." I pointed at the elevator. "What is that?" "That is not your concern," he said, handing me the bottle. This angered me. "What if Matthew finds it?" "There's a code. He can't get in without it." "And what if we need that code someday? What if they do bomb us?" It was the first time I had ever truly questioned him. He leaned against the doorframe, considering me. I could see the wheels turning in his head. "You saw the news this morning." I nodded. Harvey drew a deep breath. "I'm glad you're keeping yourself informed, as difficult as that is these days. Nuclear war isn't a new threat. It's been hanging over us all since the 40s. But the bombs are stronger now, and I'm not sure how long cooler heads will prevail. Things are escalating quickly, much faster than what the public sees." "Are Matthew and I the public now? Where does it go?" That caught him off guard. He tilted his head, then drew a breath. "Come on," he said. "You're old enough to ask the questions, then you're old enough to know the truth." He showed me how to open the mirror, how to punch in the code. It was the date he and Mama married, followed by Matthew's birthday. And then he brought me down into the belly of the earth. We emerged into a long, stark hall that stretched as far as the eye could see. Doors on both sides bellied the presence of rooms. I took in the chipped paint, the worn cement floor. "I don't understand. This looks way older than the house." "It is," Harvey said. "This has been here for decades. It's why I bought this lot. There's an old underground facility beneath it. They used to keep our nuclear bombs there." I frowned. "I thought it was all family farms." "Most of the land around here is, but the parcel across the street contained a decommissioned missile silo. It's not really uncommon. The older sites are outdated and are no longer suitable for their original purpose. So, sometimes the government decommissions them and sells them. There's one 100 miles away that someone is turning into luxury survival condos." I stared at him. "You built the lab in the old site." "It helps that we are working with the government," he nodded. "The building you see is just the top part. Most of it is underground. This is an old exit corridor and living quarters. Much of this was already in place. We just repurposed the structure." I peered down the corridor, then noticed the golf cart parked beside us. I realized only then that I'd never seen him come or go from work. "So, this goes to the lab?" He nodded. "There are some really thick doors at the end. I'm not giving you that code, though. I can't." He jerked his head at the golf cart. "I'll give you a tour." And he did. The bunker had bedrooms, dorm rooms, rooms stuffed with supplies, game rooms, kitchens, a gym, even a theater. Can I see the lab? No can do, Sprout. He shook his head. You need clearance for that. I can show you pics I took today, but you can't tell anyone. He showed me a few pictures from his phone gallery. They were of a lab. In an indoor grow room beyond a glass wall stood a head of corn the size of our couch. It doesn't need as much sunlight as regular corn, nor as much water. It isn't the seed itself that does this, it's the fertilizer. We can spray it over crops and the produce in them will grow continuously. Plants reach 20 times their original average size in just days. But that's not all. It doesn't rot after it's picked, and if it's dying, we can rejuvenate it. He looked me in the eye, strangely open, almost honest even. I want you and your mother and Matthew to be proud of me. Something inside me bristled. Is that why you're taking people's farms? He looked tired, then defeated. I think that's enough for today. He turned the golf cart around. I didn't say anything until we reached the elevator. Matthew should know, I told him as we got in case he's home alone. Harvey nodded. I've been thinking that myself. He's old enough now. Why don't we plan to all come down together? Maybe this weekend. Talk about our family emergency plans. I shrugged. Sure. When we got upstairs, I went to find Mama, but as I approached her suite, I heard her talking on the phone. I know. The readings are all the same. I'm terrified. I know. The whole world is mad. Did you hear about what happened this morning in Detroit? No, I hadn't heard about that. I can't shake the feeling. It's like it was before Jared died, but 1,000,000 times worse. I dreamt again of my father that night, his eyes staring through the snow. But this time, a shadow was falling over him. The shadow of a thing that should not exist. I didn't really understand Harvey's work. To be honest, I still don't. Nor do I wish to. I see the cost of his madness every time I step out onto the mansion balcony and survey what was once a thriving landscape. But I did understand that he was interacting with some very powerful men. Oswald was the worst of them. One week, he was directing Harvey on how to sidestep an environmental regulation. The next, he was planning lawsuits against companies that weren't cooperating with his demands. I didn't understand the intricacies of their plots, but I understood that they were playing chess in a way, manipulating people and power. I saw a change in myself that year, and a change in Jamie. He wasn't really himself that summer. He was quiet, distant. I wouldn't hear from him for days sometimes, and when he did come around, he didn't laugh or smile as much as he used to. I knew that his mother was sick, and his sister Jeannie was having some issues, so I chalked it up to that. Mama, Matthew, and I went to Costa Rica for a few months that winter. I remember little of that trip. I think I spent most of it at the beach. I still missed the sea and loved when we went to beach resorts for vacation. But this time, the waters felt sick. The waves that lapped at my ankles felt slimy and foul, poisoned. But I built sandcastles with Matthew as my father had with me. Those sunny days ended much too fast. I went to visit Estelle as soon as I got home. I got there just as she was heading out to check her beehives and see how the bees had fared through winter. I chattered at her as we walked across the yard, the first warmth of the year in the pale sunlight. I remember she was talking about her latest batch of homemade wine as we approached the hive. She lifted the cover off. Let's see how they've done. The smile faded from her face. I think, looking back, that the smile faded from her world. Death. Hive after hive. I saw her wipe a tear from her eye, looking at the tiny fuzzy creatures curled up, dead. One of them twitched as I watched, its little legs going still. I realized I'd come to see them as something different. What do you think happened? I asked. She looked at me, a hardness in her eyes I'd never seen from her. What do you think happened? Why do you think the cicadas are so late? My mouth went dry. Estelle turned and walked away. She didn't invite me in. The drought started soon after that. The dust took everything that year. By June, the yellow days were upon us. The dust was everywhere. It got into my eyes, my nose, my ears. My hair was constantly coated in it. I cannot keep from coughing. We were forced to stay inside. The air wasn't safe to breathe. Matthew was in my room that day, playing with one of the scarab beetles I'd bought him. He'd built it a little obstacle course and was watching it crawl across a tiny makeshift bridge when suddenly Harvey appeared at the door. This was unusual. Harvey rarely came up to the 3rd floor. That was our bedrooms, the game rooms, and the servants' quarters. I don't even know what he wanted. I think he forgot as soon as he saw the beetle. He froze, honing in on it like a cat spotting a mouse. "What the fuck is that?" Matthew grinned up at him. "This is Ralphie." "You have got to be kidding me. Ralphie?" I'd never seen him that angry. "That's a freaking bug. That is disgusting. You brought an insect into this house? Do you know how many diseases those things carry?" The smile fell from Matthew's face. "Put it down," Harvey snapped. Then, when Matthew didn't, "Put it down." Matthew obeyed, his lip trembling. Harvey walked over and stomped it. Matthew immediately went into hysterics. Harvey started yelling at him. In the process of reaming Matthew out, he turned and saw the dressing room with the shelves of tanks and vivariums. When he turned, I saw the rage in his eyes. "What is this?" You could cut the tension with a knife. His anger was palpable. I swallowed. "Which one? I can't tell if you're pointing at my Emperor Scorpion, Rosie, or my jumping spider, Bert." Harvey turned and with one swipe knocked all of my riding trophies off my bookshelf. "There is one rule in this house," Harvey growled. "One. No pets." I'd been prepared for this for a while. I already had my argument ready, but the words dried up in my mouth. "They're in tanks," I said quietly. "They can't contaminate anything." He picked up one of my riding trophies and smashed the nearest cage. My Javanese jungle scorpion, Maud. I was terrified that he would stomp them all, or overturn the tanks where I was growing crickets and roaches for them. I started screaming and tried to grab his arm. He shook me off and took aim at my bearded dragon, Dragula, whom I'd adopted as a rescue and nursed back to health. Matthew ran and stood between him and its tanks, red face streaming with tears. "Stop it! Stop! Don't hurt them!" I'd never heard Harvey shout before, but he turned on Matthew, raging. "Get out of my way!" Matthew was terrified, but he didn't back down, tiny as he was. "She's right. You never said we couldn't have things in tanks. They don't shed, they don't make messes. Besides, you have bugs too." "Mine are in display cases," Harvey said coldly. "They're dead," Matthew said. "These are living, and they didn't do anything wrong." I loved him in that split second. Harvey, too, saw something in him. And then, surprisingly, he backed down. Somewhat. "Get rid of them, or I will. I want them gone by the end of the month. And you're both grounded this weekend." Then he stomped out, slamming the door. I just sat there, crying. Suddenly, I felt a tiny arm around my neck. Matthew, hugging me. "I'll find you more bugs," he promised. "I saw one last week." Eliza appeared at the door, looking rattled. "Harvey said there was a mess?" It was a new moon that night. As soon as the black limousine drove off, I ran through the dead and silent fields to the sluggish river. Jamie found me there later. I curled into him, sobbing, as the moon rose fat and yellow over the cornfields, and the cicadas, finally awakening, screamed their rage at being born into a dying world. I hadn't seen much of Jamie that summer. It felt so safe when he curled his arms around me. I was beyond thrilled when he invited me to go to the carnival with him and his friends the next week. To cheer you up, he said. It'll be fun. The next morning, the yard was littered with dead birds.
And that was part 3 of Carrion Harvest. Having your stepfather smash the homes of your insect pets is pretty bad, but what happens next is going to be a hell of a lot worse. We've got dead birds, dead bees, and what species will be dead next? Well, the horrors persist next time here on Undertow. Carrion Harvest was written by Morgan Sylvia, performed by Jessica Taige, with editing and sound design by Rory O'Shea, produced by yours truly, Fred Greenhalgh, as a Dagaz media production for Realm. Undertow is a production of Realm, hosted by Fred Greenhalgh, executive produced by Fred Greenhalgh and Molly Barton.
Can you actually change your personality if you want to? How does peer pressure work, and why is it so powerful? Should you ever really trust your gut when you make a big decision? These are just a few of the topics we've recently covered on my podcast, Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and each episode of Something You Should Know covers multiple topics that are likely relevant to you. You'll discover things you can use in your life today, right now, like how to have a great conversation, how to be more courageous, the anatomy of the perfect apology, and much, much more. To date, there are over 1,000 episodes of Something You Should Know, and we've gotten over 4,000 mostly 5-star reviews. I invite you to check out Something You Should Know. Look for the bright yellow light bulb on the blue background. Something You Should Know, wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Warning Woods has haunting horror stories that are sure to linger with you long after listening. I'm Miles Tritle, writer and narrator of The Warning Woods. Each week, I write an original scary story and share it with you on The Warning Woods. I've written 2 novels and nearly 200 short stories spanning the horror genre. If you're into scary stories, you need to check out The Warning Woods. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Warning Woods and click play at your own risk.